Good evening, everyone. I am Harshita Garg, part of Gaulabshi United, and today we have Srishti Sinha with us, and she will be talking to us on the topic of body shaming. And let's start with a brief introduction of her from her only. Hi, Srishti.
Hi. Okay, I'm a student of philosophy and psychology, and I've recently graduated with a master's in psychological studies. Currently, I'm studying counseling and family therapy, and I'm looking to make a career in counseling psychologist at the moment, and then eventually in research psychology. So I'm really happy to be here talking about um, body image and yeah.
Okay, that's great. It's good to hear from you. Okay, so we will be having some questions for you. So, can we start with them?
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question for you is does motivating a fat person to get fit count under body shaming?
Okay, so whether or not anything can be characterized as shaming depends on how you go about it. So when you're motivating someone to get fit, you need to make sure that what you're saying is aligned with their own personal motivations and it's not driven by what society says is important. So shame is a social emotion because it's tied to how society perceives us. So when you're able to remove the social element from the equation, you're not exactly shaming anyone. So if you stop trying to impose standards that society has forced on us, and you start helping them and showing them ways to like better their physical and psychological well-being and health, then you're actually helping them and you're not actually shaming them. So I think it all depends on how you go about it.
Okay, so it means it depends on the way of speaking. Like I say, you as a person that you look good, but you can be like more good if you have like if you are more fit, it will help affect your health and all. But if we are saying it a negative way, then it gives a shameful impact, right?
No, so yeah, of course, the words matter a lot because the words reflect your intentions. But the point is to make sure that you are listening to that person and ask them why they want to, why they feel like they need to change. And if that change is driven by like a standard imposed by society, then there'll always be an element of shame in that. And that's when you need to remind them that they don't need to feel ashamed. They just need to get better so that they're able to, lead a healthier life and feel better for themselves. So yeah, that's what I actually meant. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, my next question is that what is the first thing one should keep in mind before going giving a compliment to anyone else?
Okay, so giving somebody a compliment can do two things when it's done right. The first thing is that it'll give you a sort of emotional validation where it kind of reinforces ideas about you that you find desirable or ideas that you want to emulate in yourself. And the second thing is that it can empower you and it helps you feel comfortable and strong and beautiful in your own skin. So those are the two things that like a compliment can do. I think personally that when you're giving a compliment to someone, you should always focus on the things that they can control. If you tend to like focus on the things that they have no control over, and like the superficial things, I mean, it's all right, obviously it's all right to talk about how someone looks beautiful physically and they aesthetically look nice, but the problem with getting hung up on that one side of things is that first of all, those things are temporary. So as soon as those things change, the self-worth and the empowerment that you derive from it will also go away. So, I mean, for example, if one person is constantly hearing how they have beautiful hair, they'll eventually, the self-worth that they derive from it will go away when they start losing their hair. So it's better to compliment someone on things that they can control, like their character or the hard work that they do. So that kind of thing. The next problem with getting hung up on visuals and like superficial things is that will always create a divide in society, because there are people who will fit the norm and therefore will be privileged because of it, and there will be people who don't fit the norm and who will be targeted and marginalized because of it. So that means that, I mean, that marginalized group can be anyone. It can be women who are underweight, overweight. It can be men who maybe look like women, or have like, men maybe who have breasts and they're marginalized and bullied for it, or even men who are overweight or underweight. It can also like extend to discussions about bodies that are abled versus bodies that are disabled. So that there's like a whole array of things that can um, create that divide. So it's important to keep that in mind and to really like focus on uplifting people based on things that they have a control over, just so that you can like empower people. And like that's really like what the goal of complimenting someone is. So I think that's
Okay, Srishti. So my next question is just regarding a statement that you like will often see people calling, like people who often resort to calling someone names on the basis of their body shape, size, and weight, argue that symmetry is the law of nature. Anything that deviates from symmetry and median value is hideous and should change. What, according to you, perpetuates this that ideology? Okay.
okay. So what according to
Hope I
me
am clear with
perpetuates?
the question.
Yeah, the question is clear. Okay, so I feel like any individual or organization or ad agency, corporation that profits out of any kind of toxic rhetoric that's there in society, that, for example, in this case, a very fixed idea of what's beautiful, will do everything to maintain that status quo. So what I mean here is that there are companies who sell diet pills, there are companies who sell laxatives, there are celebrities and people who promote that and they profit out of it. So they're genuinely, literally profiting out of this, the maintenance of this idea. And they're also gaining out of it intangibly. So I think anyone who's rationalizing a form of oppression, a form of prejudice, is gaining out of it. And this kind of thinking is perpetrated by that kind of motivation. So so what I mean to say is that this kind of idea is basically just to rationalize and legitimize body shaming, or like upholding that same standard. So that's how people who are privileged are making sense of it. So I think that's really what perpetrates that ideology. And also I think it's really like unreasonable to use scientific, like they're basically legitimizing it using science, right? They're
Yeah,
saying that
actually.
it's how we should resign to this kind of thinking just because evolution or just because of science. But the thing is that science has progressed and every other facet of our lives has changed. So then why do we leave these things unchallenged, right? And it's not like, okay, so for example, one of the ideas is that women who have hourglass figures are more attractive just because they're perceived to be better child bearers. But that's what the point is. It's just a perception. It's not like all the curvy women in the world are able to bear children, and it's not like people who aren't fitting that norm are not. So I think it's important to be like critical of those ideas, because resigning to them is just basically upholding prejudice and oppression. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's okay. That's great, your answer. Okay, so my next question is that in Indian households before marriage, it is often asked what's the height and weight of your daughter. However, when it comes to son, apparently only the size that matters is that of his wallets. So, do you think that the society is somewhat sexist when it comes on body shaming? Like only girls are more elaborated, like you should be like this, you should be like that, or it's equal. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, the whole issue is definitely, I wouldn't use the word sexist. I would use the word gendered, because it's got to do with gender. And I think there is, I mean, as a part of a patriarchal setup, there will be gender roles assigned. And as an outcome of that, there will be certain expectations that people have of you. When it comes to body shaming, I do think women have it a lot worse, because when a woman is entering a room as a prospective bride, you will focus on the visuals involved, the aesthetic, the how tall she is, how thin she is, how fair she is, and all of those things. When a man enters a room, you will look at those things, but that's also an afterthought to how good he is as a breadwinner, how he will be able to support the family. So of course there are different kind of pressures placed on both in on all genders, but for women it's definitely more about the aesthetics. So, and I think women in general are just like bombarded with this like negative narrative that they have to constantly like focus on their aesthetics. And that's also like, I mean, that's because they're literally the object of scrutiny all the time, whether it's in social media, whether it's in public spaces, whether it's in porn. It's everywhere basically. They're always being the ones, the objects basically. So I think that's what kind of makes things worse. And the barometer for worthiness, or for seeing, for determining if you're like like a suitable bride, will be if you fit the physique that is desirable, rather than, you know, like your work, or what you do in your personal life, or your character even. So yeah, I think it's definitely a gendered issue.
Okay, so my next question is that how do you feel about the way media portrays men and women?
Okay, I think that the media has started doing a lot in favor of this cause in general, because they have started broadcasting social activists and celebrities who speak out about this cause a lot. But I also think that they're not doing enough independently to, like uplift men and women, because even when they're talking about, for example, if they're talking about Kangna Ranaut, they're talking about how she's speaking against fairness creams. They'll focus more on the spectacle of an actress speaking up rather than what she's talking about. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
they're focused. Yeah. So I think while they are broadcasting news, they're not actually, like they're not doing a lot to oppose the standards that have been like forced on us. Also, I think there's definitely a divide here as well. Female actors and female professionals in the public eye have it a lot worse, because any story that you'll hear about them will always be around what they look like, what they wore, like
yeah, exactly.
how they've put on weight, how they've lost weight. So for example, if there's an actress who might have just married or had a kid and she might have put on weight, every interviewer will just ask her about how her married life is, how she's put on weight. They'll not ask her about work, they'll just ask her about, like how the pregnancy weight is, difficult to deal with or whatever. And what's interesting is that men, on the other hand, like the dad bod is considered to be attractive, where you have a little bit of a paunch, you're carefree, and you have a stubble, and you don't have to worry about airbrushing. And all of that is, like there's a lot of leniency for men, whereas women are always like criticized for just like changing a little bit or like, you know, letting go or whatever. So I think there should be more focus on the mom board. There should be more focus on, you know, like, it's all right to like, I mean, you don't have to constantly think about what you look like. You gave birth. You don't have to like, you know, focus on your weight all the time. So I think that's one issue. I also think that male actors and male celebrities also face it a lot because they're also forced to look, you know, like muscular and chiseled. And like, I remember watching an interview with Abhishek Bachchan, and he was talking about how like the interviewer was asking him why he wasn't as fit as Hrithik Roshan in Dhoom, and he just like responded by saying because like him being fit wasn't really relevant to his character. So I mean, I think that kind of leniency is not given to women, and there's obviously a gender issue there as well. So yeah, I do think there's a problem with the way media portrays this issue because they always tend to make it, they're not doing enough to oppose this, you know, like negative narrative in society. It's patriarchal narrative. Yeah.
Yeah. So, matlab, what do you think? Ki they only portrays women as this, or also men? Like it
No,
is
I
that gender issue wala thing. Ki only women face these issues, or men also, like in men professionals as actors, or like in media thing. So they also face that issues, or only women who are like questioned like that. Ki how you put on weight.
No, I think, see, of course, men are also not, they're not exempted from this, you know, criteria to look perfect, to like, you know, have the right body. People are so brutal to like men who, like, there are, if they grow if they grow breasts, or if they, you know, look more like women, it becomes like such a big issue. But the problem is that it's definitely worse for women because it's like the first thing that comes in mind. They
Yeah.
like they'll, so if like Kareena Kapoor puts on weight after having a child and she is like taking a break from her career, the whole interview will be about how she's put on weight, how it feels to have a child. Or not even the interview, maybe like just like the way the news will cover that story. And I think even like, okay, forget about putting on weight. Even if you have a woman who lost a lot of weight and you know, to fit a role, and she worked really hard on her body, the kind of questions that she will be asked in the promo interviews will be around her diet. They will not be around that character or the work that she put in for that character. They'll just be around कि आपने कौन सा diet follow किया, आपने क्या workout किया to become so thin. So that is the problem because you're always turning the whole conversation in to like to fit the same kind of mindset, which is what I meant. But of course, men also have to adhere to a standard for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because for men,
Yeah.
the first question will be like, how was your role and how did you perform well in that role? How did you get
Yeah.
that role? But for
Yeah.
women, it comes like in this role you are this fit, or in this role you are like a bit fat. So how
Yeah.
are you working on that? So that question comes first when it comes to men and women. That difference, right?
Yeah. Exactly. They'll be asked how much makeup they've put or stuff
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
that. Basic aesthetic things. Yeah.
How do you
Definitely.
look basically? How
Yeah.
उनके हिसाब से मतलब they question how they work after how they look, कि पहले looks आते हैं then their work come.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay, so my next question is that what can be done to make society a little more inclusive of all these body sizes and shapes?
Okay. Okay. So there's a lot that can be done. At the sort of macro, like broader level, you can start by taking legal action against individuals and corporations that profit profit from the sale and consumption of laxatives and diet pills that are very harmful for people, and they don't even declare the side effects of those products. Of course, you can sell anything that that's not like, so for example, if you sell cigarettes, you always talk about the side effects of cigarettes, but they don't talk about the side effects of laxatives. And impressionable children will just consume it just because they think that they'll start looking like them. And the problem is that when you're promoting those products, you've photoshopped yourself. You might have taken you might have gotten surgery done, and no one remembers those things. They just constantly, they think that those laxatives and those products that have been sold are causing them to look like that. So I think there should be some kind of accountability in the public sphere, so that you at least start by declaring their side effects and provide all the information, right? So I think that's one thing that has to be done. Secondly, I think there should be greater representation of different body types in media. Media being the news, being visual, any form of visual media, where films or TV shows, there should just be more role models to look up to, who are of different sizes and shapes, who look different. Because it's so annoying to see like only like one side character being someone who's either underweight or overweight or looks slightly different and doesn't fit the norm. You want main characters in films to represent like different body shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Then also you want representation in fashion and clothing industries, because what these industries and corporations do is that they treat plus size and minus size as some sort of CSR initiative, some sort of extension to their usual clothing range. So it just feels like you're just making those clothes because those people who fall under that category just need clothes. But it's not that. It's not just a functional thing. Obviously they want to look good just like anyone fitting the norm would. So you need to assimilate those sizes into the usual clothing range. It's plus size section nahi hona chahiye alag sa, or minus size section nahi hona chahiye. It should all be in like one group, so that you feel more inclusive and it doesn't feel like you're some different category of people, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's more of the macro stuff. I mean, obviously you can also engage in pressure politics, like the Black Lives Movement kind of pressured Fair and Lovely to drop Fair from the thing. And so like obviously like larger social movements will also help in bringing about change. But I also think there are a lot of things you can do at the micro level, at the individualistic level. You can definitely start by educating children, um, exposing them to different body types. So I think the kind of toys that they play with, I mean, shouldn't just like be limited to like Barbie doll, because like nobody looks like Barbie doll. I never met anyone looking like a blonde Barbie doll as a child. And it just felt so alien to me, but I obviously felt that that was the aesthetic that we were looking up to. And that obviously affects your self-image. So I think the kind of toys you are exposed to, the kind of films you watch should be more inclusive as a child. Then also the biopsychosocial effects of just buying into this idea of one standard of beauty is also should also become more transparent to people, because like people don't know that body shaming literally increases suicide risk. It increases obesity. It increases maladaptive eating behaviors. So all those things, and people shame in the name of trying to get people to be healthier, and they don't even know that it can cause them to, like die to suicide. So that's something. There should be more sensitivity in that area, and that should be in the curriculum in schools. So I think that will definitely increase awareness and sensitivity, and just generally practice empathy, talk to people, educate people, and just I think those are the few things that you can do to increase inclusivity.
Yeah, that's awesome. The measures you recommended are like can be implemented easily, but no one actually implements them. The question is that.
Yeah, because I think the problem is that people don't speak out, and like no matter who is speaking, they're somehow muzzled. If it's like someone who falls under the category, for example, if there's an overweight person or an underweight person speaking against this the strict body types that we are forced to adhere to and
Yes.
aspire to, that person will just be called bitter, and they'll just be like, you're just making it about yourself. So they'll be muzzled. Then people who are who are thin and who fall under the category, if they speak, they'll be shamed for that. They'll be like, it doesn't even concern you, or you're just trying to look good, or you're just trying to advance your own career. So somehow people just tend to like mute different people from actually speaking up against. Someone has to do the talking and keep the conversation running so that actual change comes about. So I think that's one other issue that's sort of.
Okay, Srishti, my next question is that what should a person can do to gain confidence in such situations?
Okay, to gain confidence. Okay, there's a lot you can do, but I think the first step is to start accepting yourself and reminding yourself of your own priorities. So when you want to better yourself, you need to make sure that you're doing that in line with your personal objectives and not what society is telling you is important. So you do need to keep working on yourself. That's the second thing. You need to constantly work on yourself, evolve your thinking, exercise regularly, eat healthy, do your best within your capacity and constantly work on yourself, but make sure that you're not doing it just because it's expected of you. You have to do it just because you need to bring yourself up, just because you want to feel better, just because you want to live a healthier life.
Yeah, exactly.
The next thing I think that's very important to remind yourself is that your body is a means to experiencing the world. So you should take care of it so that you can experience the world, so you can live your life. You lead a happy life and a healthy life. It's not just an object for visual gratification. So if you keep treating it like that, you'll get hung up on like the superficial things and you won't even be able to do other things. You will just expend all your energy thinking about what you look like instead of taking care of yourself. So self-care doesn't just mean taking care of your skin and your hair and your fit, like your physique, but it also extends to, like getting your priorities straight and expending your energy on the right things. And to gain confidence and feel less like an imposter, it's really important to keep working on yourself. Another very effective tool that I find works a lot for people who feel very diffident about their bodies, or negative about their bodies, is that um, they they're always advised to help themselves like they would help a friend. So if you see your friend kind of hating on her body, or like talking about how like her leg has, her thighs are too fat or whatever, give give yourself the same advice you would give to her. Because I find a lot of times we're kinder to people around us than to ourselves, and that kind of kindness has to be extended to ourselves as well. So I think that's another thing that has to be done to like build and work on your confidence. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing points. And one last question from you is that what is the correct response to body shaming? Like if anyone says something to us, what should we respond then?
Okay, so yeah, as in, am I the one being shamed, or am I watching? Okay, it doesn't matter. The correct response, basically. So if I'm not sure if there's one correct response, but I think the initial response that will make sense is to just as loudly and as clearly, just like voice out what's wrong with body shaming. You need to you need to critique them. You need to call them out. So if they're shaming someone, tell them why that's wrong. Tell them why that's unjustified. Explain to them rationally, critique them, and just you need to make sure that change lasts. You can't just bully them. You can't personally attack them and make it into a personal thing, because then it sort of takes away from the issue. You need to explain to them why they're wrong. Explain to them why shaming is doing worse than doing any good, and how no one should have to like adhere to a random standard of beauty just because society tells us to. So I think that's the first correct response. But it's also important to not, like attack them or threaten them, because we're all brainwashed. We're all trying to be better feminists. We're all trying to learn and evolve. So I think it's important to exchange information and talk, and not make it into a personal like fight or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so like someone like you spoke about like that we should be loud and we should respond them that in a correct way, but uh, like many people can't say that in one go, right? They would like वो ये
Yeah.
सोचेंगे कि मेरी ही गलती है इसमें, because yes I am fat, so he would of course say me. So उसमें क्या, what we can do कि of course if I
Yeah.
am
So,
fat, so someone would say me, so what can I respond to him or her कि because वो गलत
yeah.
बोले,
So
but हमें तो ऐसे लगेगा ना कि वो सही बोल रहा है, because yes of course.
yeah, I mean, that kind of thinking, a lot of this, I mean, a big part of this issue has to do with how we see ourselves. If we start seeing ourselves in a different way, it won't matter what other people say. So you need to work on your confidence. You need to inform yourself, and like, as a person who's maybe underweight or overweight, you need to understand why what society says doesn't matter first, and then you'll be able to like say something else to someone else. Obviously, initially, if you are also brainwashed to believe that your physicality is the be all and end all of everything, then it will be harder for you to fight back. It will be harder for you to feel empowered and confident. But you need to start by informing yourself, and just like working on yourself. Even if you want to adhere to those standards, if those are what you want personally, you need to know how to stop people from shaming you, because no one like can bring you down for how you are physically.
Yeah.
So like you should be able to like respond accordingly. But yeah, it starts with educating yourself.
So yeah, okay. So one last note you want to tell people who are watching this, like in one line or in 2 to 3 lines, a short notice to
Yeah.
them or a short quote to them you want to share.
Okay, I mean, I'll just say that if you think that you need assistance or help, it's very important to seek out the help that you need, whether it's medical help, whether it's psychological help. So I think, and it's also very important to take care of yourself in a holistic way, just to see your body as something that gets you from point A to point B, and not just as something that you observe and like um, aesthetically appreciate. So remind yourself that, keep working on yourself, talk to people, be be open to change, and yeah, seek the help that you need. That's what I want to say.
Okay, that was a great session with you, Srishti. Anything you want to share more with us?
I think I've spoken a lot, but thank you. That was actually quite fun for me as well. That was
Okay, that
interesting.
was a very informative session, right? Because like you are
Yeah.
breaking those bonds or that backward thinking of people, because when thinking
Yeah.
change, then would like actions be taken na? But people are like in backward thinking or in limited way of thinking, so that should be changed, right?
Absolutely. Like it starts with talking about it as vocally as possible, as loudly as possible, and then just having a civilized conversation about it. And then you can get into pressure politics. Then you can get into more serious ways of bringing about change. But you have to keep talking about it, otherwise, it's just gonna die out, basically.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly. And that's what like we have this session named as naked truth of body shaming. So that was the session,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because
that
that
was fun.
is the
Thank you.
yeah. Okay,
Bye. Do you mind if I add you on? We added each other on LinkedIn.
thank you, bye.
Bye.